Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel. Let's do some last minute gift ideas. These are simple and easy to do, and you can pair them together or separately. They're pretty inexpensive, especially if you have stuff on hand. So for the first one, I'm going to be using these little house slippers. I picked these up for $5 at the Dollar Tree. And then I'm going to be using a variety of buttons that I picked up at Hobby Lobby and some strong thread and a needle. Now you could do this same thing with beads, trim, anything like that. I just liked these kind of crystal buttons, and I'm just going to be sewing them on. I prefer to sew versus gluing, but again, it's going to depend on the house slippers that you have. And you just want to kind of decide how you're going to want to put them on your slipper, the kind of order you want to do. You just want to make sure that obviously the right and the left match. So I'm going to be putting them on this longest piece that kind of folds over. And I always tend to start with the biggest one first and then kind of lay out how I want the rest of them to go. And I just made sure that, I had two of each button. Now these buttons I like to get at Hobby Lobby because they're pretty inexpensive for the crystal buttons. And that way it doesn't cost a whole lot to do this. So then with my needle and thread, I'm just going to sew them on. I'm just going to go straight up from the back, starting with my first button in the center, and just sew them on like you would a regular button. I'm using a heavy-duty upholstery thread from Coats & Clark, and have it doubled just for extra strength. And just going to sew them on several times and then knot them in the back when I'm done. Again, depending on the type of slippers that you're using, you may not be able to do it this way. You may have to end up hot gluing or using a fabric glue, something like that. But usually, most house slippers, you do have the ability to sew them on. They're not so heavy or so thick that you can't do that. I've done this before with several different types of house slippers, using some sew-on rhinestones and pearls, or using some really pretty trim that I had on hand, and just sewing it along the edge. The reason I do like sewing it is because you can get down kind of through that furriness of the fabric, whereas if you glue it, I feel like it kind of sits on the top, and it really just doesn't really get down in the fibers, and it kind of looks like an afterthought, whereas if you sew it, it kind of looks like you bought it that way. Again, I think for these, with the price of the slippers and the buttons and everything, I think I spent a little less than $15 on these. So again, this is a great gift. You could always pair it with some coffee or a candle, some chocolates, something like that, for a simple gift. And it doesn't take very long to make. Once I have my button sewn on, I'll just go through the back and knot it off about 2 to 3 times, and then clip my threads very close to the knot. And then I'll just do the same thing with all the buttons. And then once I have one shoe done, then I will do the second shoe, just copying the placement so that they both look even. Now for this next one, I picked up this blanket at IKEA. I want to say I think it was around $10. But you can do this with any blanket. It just needs to have kind of a wider weave so that you can get a needle and some yarn through it. So, and then I picked up this ball of skein of yarn at Hobby Lobby, and I just liked it because it had so many different colors in it, so that I could get a variety of colors without having to buy a ton of different yarn. But you don't need a whole lot of yarn, so you could definitely use scraps. I just put a little bit of tape on the end of the yarn just to make it easier to thread through the yarn needle that I'm using. And of course, Twix had to check out the yarn because, you know, he loves being in the way. Once I wrapped the tape around, I just kind of cut it at an angle, and that just makes it easier to thread through the eye of the needle. And then from there, you can cut or just pull the tape off. So I just started at one end of the blanket and just kind of went up. Again, I eyeballed this. I didn't measure it or anything. I just kind of went up about half an inch or an inch or so on the edge. And because this has such a wide, loose weave to it, it was really easy to just thread the yarn through. So I went up from the back and just pulled my yarn all the way through. And again, you're going to want to make sure you take that tape off because you won't be able to get it through the blanket. And then I'm just doing random sized stitches. I'm just kind of following the same row of weave through the blanket just to kind of get it in a straight line. And then I'm just going in and out, making different sizes of stitches, very random. Again, I'm not measuring anything. I just want it to look really just almost like the yarn was woven through the blanket. Again, this is a great way to use up scraps because each piece obviously is only as long as the width of the blanket. So, you know, you don't need a whole lot of yarn. You can use all the same color. You can use multiple colors. If you have a skein of yarn like the one I'm using that is variegated or changes colors, gives you the ability to, use different colors all in the same skein. You can do as many rows as you want. Space them out as you want. If you're feeling creative, you could even do a design. Maybe do kind of a zigzag design through it, or anything like that. Again, this project is super easy to do, doesn't take a whole lot of time, and, really it's just the cost of the blanket if you have all the other supplies on hand. I really liked using this blanket from IKEA, one, because it was relatively inexpensive, and two, because the weave of it was such an open, loose weave that it really made it easy to follow the, a kind of a line to do my sewing. And of course, it's a blanket, so Twix had to try it out. But I think it took me less than an hour to do this entire blanket. So definitely something that you could do, if you needed a last minute gift, something like that. Just make sure when you pull your yarn through that you keep your blanket flat. You don't want to pull the yarn through so tight that it ends up gathering up or anything like that. So, you want your yarn to be tight enough that it doesn't loop out and get caught on things, but, not so tight as it actually gathers up your blanket. once you get to the end, you're just going to basically stop about the same distance from the edge that you started. This blanket kind of had a little bit of a darker line, like where it was kind of finished off, which made it easy to gauge. And you're just going to knot your yarn off on the back side. And I kind of left longer strings to begin with, but then I went back when I was done and trimmed them all off shorter. So again, I just flipped it over on the back side and then knotted it twice. And you want to do this where you started your yarn and where you stopped your yarn, just so your yarn doesn't come out. Again, I left a long string now, but I did go back when I was all done and cut those off a little shorter. You could also use your yarn to make tassels or pom-poms, anything like that you wanted to add to the look of your blanket. So again, now that I'm done, I'm just going to go up about 1/2 inch apart, and I think I did mine for about 5 inches up, and love the way it turned out. As you can see, this would be a great gift paired together or separately, and just so cute and easy to do, and really gives a personalized handmade